Welcome Home, a podcast for veterans about veterans by veterans, is a project of Willing Warriors and the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
Good morning. I'm your host, Larry Ziliaks, Director of Culinary Services here at the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run. And this week, our guest is Jess Finucane, and she's the Director of Policy and Advocacy for the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America organization. And this is the first time I've had anybody from the organization on, and I'm very excited about it because this is an organization that has been around for a while, and this is an organization that gets you benefits. So when there's policy that needs to be addressed on the Hill, when there are programs that need funding, this is an organization that is up there, up front with others that we're familiar with, the VFW, the American Legion of DAV, testifying before Congress and saying, hey, this is the benefits that the service members and veterans need. So, Jess, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having us.
So, your prior service, Air Force. Tell us a little bit about your Air Force career. You enlisted, an officer?
Yeah, so I was enlisted. I retired after 20 years as an E8, Senior Master Sergeant. I was a career Korean linguist. So my entire career, I learned Korean at the Defense Language Institute out in Monterey, California, and
not a bad sign.
No, it was awesome. And went to Korea multiple times because where else would you send a Korean linguist? So I spent 6 years total in Korea.
Oh, it's cold. People don't realize how cold it gets there.
It is bitter cold, but great country. I mean, it was an amazing experience. So 6 years total, 4 tours, 6 years total. And then I got to go to Hawaii for my last 3-year operational tour, which is really, really cool because my whole career I had focused on Korea, North Korea, right, as a mission set in intel.
Sure.
And then I got to go to Hawaii to do the China mission set. And that, unbeknownst to me at the time, really set me up for my last assignment in the Air Force, which was as a defense fellow, a legislative liaison in the DoD legislative liaison program. So that was 2022. I came to DC. I did a little bit of time in the State Department for my developmental tour. And then I was on the Hill as a defense fellow for a year in 2023. And then I spent my last year and a half as a House liaison for appropriations. And all of that was during, right, then the pivot back to the Pacific, focus on China. So my previous experience kind of really went well with what I was going to be doing on the Hill. And so I retired as of 1 December from my Air Force job and then pivoted straight into IAVA policy director.
Wow. And in Hawaii, were you at Hickam?
I was technically at Hickam, but then up in Wahiawa, up at the Rochefort.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
How did your transition go? I mean, you kind of left the tribe behind.
I felt, how did I feel about it? I felt like it was very rapid in a way, if that makes sense. I jumped right into a new job, a new position. And so in a way it felt seamless because I didn't feel like I know a lot of people struggle to find during their job search, they find they have an identity crisis of sorts. You go through this big, massive change. And I felt because I started a new position so quickly, I felt like I kind of it was just another day that I woke up and all of a sudden I was out of the military. And so I think, sometimes I've still kind of looked back, like I had my first VA appointment yesterday.
Okay.
And that kind of really started making it sink in, like, oh, I'm not going to the main hospital. I'm going to the VA clinic I went over to Fort Meade, but at the VA clinic instead of Kimbrough, right? And so that was kind of more of an awakening. So I guess it's like, it was rapid, but it feels slow at the same time. Like it's not even, I know I identify as an Air Force recently retired Air Force member, but not necessarily as a veteran yet per se, which I know I am both, but it's kind of slowly sinking in.
Well, that's pretty common. We see that a lot with women service members. When they become veterans, they kind of just disappear into the background, and they don't wear the hats. They don't wear the jackets. Yeah. You can't tell them. Everybody just looks at them as a mom, and I just recorded an episode with a Army combat medic. She is a physical a PA now in Army Reserve, but she started an organization called She's the Veteran. And it got its name because her husband, he never served, but everybody thought he was a veteran.
Yep.
And he was kind enough to say, no, she's the veteran. And that's where they got the name. And I just love that because I have the same issue here with chefs. When we come, we have to be very clear who's the veteran.
Mm-hmm.
They just assume that it's the guy.
Yep.
This is good that this is an organization where, you'll be highlighted as a veteran, which is great. And your VA claim, disability claim, good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
A PAC Act claim? Do you have any exposure issues?
I don't have any exposure issues yet, but I definitely made sure to have my burn pit, right? Have, I think an interesting part about toxic exposure when they asked yesterday, right, about toxic exposure, and I flagged for them not only burn pits, open burn pits in Iraq, but I think Red Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with the Red Hill and the jet.
Much so.
That I was there at Hickam. I worked a little bit at Hickam, a little bit up in Wahiwa, and so our group was down at the PACAF headquarter building. So we were drinking that water every day, all day.
Our listeners know Major Mountain.
Yeah.
And she was a guest on that, and she was the whistleblower on Red Hill.
Yeah. So I think that's going to be, I make sure every time I go and they ask what kind of toxic exposures have you been in touch with, and I make sure to say Red Hill, and they all kind of look at me quizzically because if you weren't in Hawaii or on the Hill during that time, it doesn't sound as like people know as much. So I say write that in my records. There was jet fuel in the aquifer. And that I think is going to be kind of this next evolution of PACT Act and exposure is like the next Camp Lejeune. Like I want that to be in my records too.
Yeah.
So
it's important because we get a lot of young service members who separate as veterans. They don't think, well, I feel fine. I don't need to make a claim. And I'm always like, yeah, you feel fine now, but wait till you're my age.
Exactly.
you know. So you made the switch to IAVA, and policy was the right place for you. What for 2026? What do you see as the kind of top couple of policy issues that the organization is really focusing on?
Sure. So we're still delving out our big policy primer, policy memo, but I can tell you there's 5 main buckets of priorities. One is not a holdover. There's several that are holdovers from previous years, but how we engage with those might look a little different. One that won't look much different is Afghan allies and our support of our Afghan allies. Mm-hmm. So that is, you talked during the tour, thank you so much for that. You talked about moral injury, and that's a huge tie-in for our Afghan allies and everything that's going on right now. Again, talking about things that people not in D.C. aren't necessarily aware of, like the shootings that happened with the D.C. guardsmen and the impact that has had on the Afghan ally SIV processing, the community at large. That has been huge. And then also how that affects our veterans that have been there, that left people behind, that literally saved their lives and lives of our other soldiers. So supporting our Afghan allies and making sure to continue to be a voice to support them and to get SIV processing back going, to hopefully reestablish care. That's always going to be a place that we will gladly be outspoken on, where others might not necessarily have that bandwidth.
But that's clearly a long-term commitment. It has to be.
Right.
And there's several phases to that. You have those interpreters and those Afghan service members that are here in the country, and then you have some that still need to get here in the country who's, as time goes on, it's more dangerous for them every day. So
exactly. And then we also talk not only about those specific interpreters, translators, and our Afghan allies, but on a world stage, people are watching how we're treating those people that we made a promise to. So in the inevitable next conflict,
that's right,
who's going to want to stand with us or support us? That's and, right. So it's just a bigger national security issue at that point as well. Yeah,
I get that. You're asking somebody for help, and they're going to go, I don't want to help you because you're just going to leave me behind.
Right.
Yeah, that's huge. Yep. That's great.
So that's one. Another one where has already been off to a strong start in 2026 is supporting women veterans and their reproductive freedoms. So there's recently a VA decision or a DOJ ruling that bans all abortions at the VA, regardless of incest, rape, et cetera. And so we want our women veterans to be able to go. That near total abortion ban is also just care and counsel. It's not just the care, but it's also counseling. So that means a woman veteran can't go to sometimes their VA is their only source of medical care. And so you're saying that if something happened to them, if they were raped, and they cannot go to their VA and even get counseling on what their options are. So that's a place that we've also been very vocal. There is a Congressional Review Act bill, both in the House and the Senate right now, to reverse that opinion so that women are able to get care and counseling in extreme cases, right? At least for rape, incest, and life-threatening. Mm-hmm. And so we are pushing on the House and Senate to approve the Congressional Review Acts in both of the chambers. That I think will be coming up within the next 2 weeks, probably. Perhaps as the Senate may be voting in within the next 2 weeks. So that's a huge thing. The other three main buckets, of course, healthcare is one. Will always be one. There's a lot. That's a big onion to peel back. Oh, yeah. But we really are focusing, of course, the new suicide, the annual suicide report just came out, I think a week or two ago. Yeah, the numbers are still going up. So that is something that is on the forefront of everyone's minds and ours as well. So suicide prevention and how that ties into everything else, right? Your job stability, your housing security, your GI Bill benefits because of how everything just kind of peels back. I think we're really going to be thinking about suicide prevention in the back of our mind through all of the other priorities. Mm-hmm. So access to lethal means is something that's one of those priorities. There's a few bills to make sure that veterans are aware of and can get free lock boxes for firearms, because removing the lethal means, that just those couple of seconds could be huge.
73% of veterans who commit suicide do so with a firearm.
Right.
And the general population rate is about 53%.
Yeah.
And female veterans, the number of female veteran suicides gone up as well. Mm-hmm. It's terrible. It's a terrible, huge problem. Have you all identified any kind of policy or any kind of area where there might be some real work done to lower that number? I mean, it seems like in the past, it's just an issue of let's throw some more money at it and see what happens. And it doesn't go down. It doesn't change. When it comes to policy, have you identified any areas in which something could be done different to help?
I think the lockbox is that's one area that potentially could help, because like you said, most 73% are by firearm. So removing that, those couple of seconds, that could mean someone's life. There are a couple, and these maybe not directly, it's such a complex problem. Mm-hmm. But there are some for military sexual trauma. There are some bills, policy related bills to address MST. So because you mentioned women veterans, and again, you got to back everything up. And so if women are experiencing or have experienced MST, and then they have PTSD that was triggered from that, and then that's a whole road that they're going down. There are several bills that address MST, destigmatization, making sure that VA clinicians are trained and have sensitivity training to deal with that appropriately, so they're not re-traumatizing women veterans that have that experience. So again, those aren't not directly suicide prevention labeled, but when you roll it back, I think those could be really impactful.
Core issues. Those are clearly core issues. And it's just recently, within, say, the last 5 years, that the VA has really started to step up and recognize that our women service members are different than the group of guys that they serve. And that's a huge step forward. But, I think depending on the organization that I talk to, upwards of 1 in 5 women service members are military sexual trauma victims. So it's huge. It's just huge. I applaud you guys for really doing that, because that, I think, is one way to make a real impact.
That was another thing. Going over our policy priority reviews yesterday, we were talking a bit about the Deborah Sampson Act is to make sure that all VA providers are trained in specific women. There's better access for women in the VA, that they are better trained. And so that passed a couple of years ago. And so another focus area is to keep them honest, right? Like the implementation and the oversight, make sure Congress is overseeing the implementation and making sure, how is this going? How is it being tracked? And what effectiveness are we seeing, not only for the Deborah Sampson Act, but also for the PACT Act?
Mm-hmm.
The VA actually is doing a really good job doing a publicly available tracker for PACT Act.
Mm-hmm.
And so, making sure that is something that might need to be codified so that it can't just decide that they want to stop doing it, or they, what information really needs to be captured and included that we want to see and keep seeing. And maybe we need to find a way to codify that so we can keep tracking the impacts of those big, huge moves.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. What were the other? We went to three.
Yeah, so we went Afghan allies and national security,
Mm-hmm.
women's equity, reproductive freedom being one of those main ones,
Mm-hmm.
and then some of those MST items, healthcare access. So suicide prevention will be at the top, access to healthcare, right? Rural veterans getting access, timely access to healthcare. The big things that you think about when you think of healthcare.
Sure.
And then there's economic stability. So that's things like job security and work transferability. So as a Korean linguist, what certifications or what qualifications or what licenses might I have gotten while I was going through 20 years of Air Force training? Like, how does that translate to the outside, or does it? Or maybe it should, or how does that transfer into a life on the outside?
Mm-hmm.
And then, GI Bill access, housing stability. So that's economic, right? And that they all it's a Venn diagram, because those feed directly back into healthcare or suicide prevention.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is civic engagement, which is, kind of a big nebulous concept. What we're talking about, freedom to express yourself and to vote and to be engaged civically in a way that you feel comfortable being yourself and showing up. So we're looking at things like the Let America Vote Act, so independent voters having the ability to vote in primaries. We're looking at things like mis and disinformation and use of AI, and how does that impact voters showing up? Is it discouraging veterans from voting because there's so much out there? Digital literacy, that one is another one that's like, there's a lot to peel back in there, but veterans show up to vote, and they show up civically more than their civilian counterparts. So we want to make sure that they have the capability to do that.
Yeah. Listeners, I want to direct you to the webpage. In doing so, I need to get my glasses out. Give me a minute here. So it's iava.org. I should have known that.
Oh, ours. Sorry. I'm here. I'm pulling out your thing.
Yeah, it's iava.org. And I want our listeners to go and check it out, all the resources that are there. Donate. I'm sure there's a donate button there. And you know what I always say, find that donate button, bang on it. Because, again, this is one of the core organizations that represents all veterans when it comes to benefits and issues that affect everybody. It's not just those that were in, Iraq or Afghanistan. It's me and my time in service way before that. Not only the PAC Act were they, really responsible for, but the Compact Act. And for those listeners who don't know the Compact Act, that means you can show up at any facility and get mental health treatment at no cost. The VA will pay for it. Doesn't matter where it is or what it is. If you seek help, they will pay for it. And that's just the type of legislation that they are helping to get promoted. And so that takes money to get on the Hill and to get your people out there talking to Congress people and doing this kind of policy work on your behalf takes money. So iava.org, check it out, look at the webpage, all the different resources, and make a donation, whatever you can. Every little bit helps. What do you see, Jess, is where the organization's going? Where do you think it'll be in 3 to 5 years?
Ooh, good question. Well, we have a new CEO as of last summer, who is also a female veteran, so very cool, Dr. Kai Hunter. And she came from a long history of research. And so I think her vision, and I think something that's really exciting, is being evidence-based, rooted in research, to where, right, you're more compelling when you go on the Hill. You're more compelling when you have the data and the science and the evidence to back something up.
Sure.
And so I think we already are, but I think we will continue to be more and more so, be the expert in the room. So, she's been already, since I've been here in October, called multiple times to come testify, to provide statements. And I think, that's the goal. You find, how do we know that we're being effective if we're invited back to the Hill to testify, to provide statements for record or witness testimony, right? For you are the expert and you have the data to back things up. What's more exciting and more compelling, in not just having research or data, is to have the veteran story. And so in March, and every year, we have our cavalry that flies in and comes to the Hill. They know our priorities in and out, and they have their own personal story. Every one of them is a veteran as well. They all have their personal connection and their personal experience. And so when you have the data and the evidence, and then you have the personal veteran story to go to the Hill and say, hey, this is why this is important, and here's how it's directly impacted or impacting me, that's the sweet spot, right? And so that's, I think, the most compelling for any time on the Hill. And I think that's something that we are already doing, but I think we're just going to get better. We're going to be that voice on the Hill that's like, this is a voice that is trusted.
Subject matter expert.
That's right.
And is this a membership organization?
It is.
So
it is.
Veterans join as a member.
That's right. And so you can be there are levels, I guess you could say. It's right now, it's, it can be as active or passive as you want it to be.
Right.
So you can go and join as a member, and you are just a member, right? And at some point you can decide to be vetted. So you can be a verified veteran, which means you would provide DD-214 or some other documentation. And if you're on a verified veteran list, you will have certain access to surveys. So we've done a couple of flash polls. We do a member survey annually in addition to our policy survey. And depending on the flash poll or the survey, do we want this to be veterans plus their family members or interested people? We might want to poll the whole of the membership to see what's on everyone's mind, or we may want to only know, as a veteran, what do you think about a certain subject, topic, issue? And so then we would poll the verified veterans only. And so right now, I think we have 40,000. I'm looking at Cameron. I think 40,000 verified veterans.
Wow.
So if you are right, you have to provide that paperwork to say, and then you are in that club so that we have direct access. And then from there, right, people annually apply from the membership. You can apply to be part of the Cavalry or part of the Leadership Fellows, which they come back, they come to the Hill, they get specific training, they deep dive into policy issues, and then they're really the voice that carries us. So it's, again, kind of tiered. It's as passive or active as you want membership to be.
And are there state level chapters, or are your fellows taking this to politic on the state level? Or
so back up a couple questions when you asked, where do I see us in 3 to 5 years? That is one of the ways that we're hoping to structure or build out our Cavalry. We don't have state chapters, but we do want, because our Cavalry members are in all 50 states, and so we do want those members to be our expert and to be able to do that at the state level. So no to state chapters, but yes, we want them involved at the state level.
Sure.
And hopefully we will see that more and more as those kind of get built out.
Well, as they get the training, I'm sure there's issues that come up on a state level.
For sure.
They can easily address.
A good one, a good example is alternative therapies. A lot of that is handled at state level.
Yep.
And while there are federal regulations and policy that is happening, a lot of that is per state. And so that's one that would be a great example for how we would want to advocate at the state level.
Right. Well, listeners, again, the webpage is iava.org. Please check it out. Donate, you can. Become a member. Is it open to all veterans or just those who were in Iraq and Afghanistan?
So our name is a little bit of a misnomer. You don't have to have served in Iraq or Afghanistan, but we are focused on post 9/11 veterans because we do have unique challenges that will increasingly present themselves through the MST, the toxic exposures. There are things that we will have unique issues, and so we are tailored for the post 9/11 veteran, but that does not mean that you had to have served in Iraq or Afghanistan specifically.
Right. Well, listeners, check it out and join, be a member, even if you're older or you're a Vietnam vet or you're just recently separated, because membership dues, donations all go to fund this work that comes back around and provides you with benefits that if you don't need them now, you will when you're older, I guarantee you. Jess, I can't thank you enough for making the trip out here to actually the wilds of Virginia. But thanks so much for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us. It's beautiful property. We really appreciate being here. Thank you.
Well, listeners, we'll have another episode next Monday morning at 0500. If you have any questions or suggestions, you can reach us at podcast@willingwarriors.org. You can find us on all the major podcast platforms. We're on YouTube and Reese Across America Radio. So thanks for listening.
The Welcome Home podcast is brought to you by Willing Warriors, a nonprofit organization serving active duty service members and veterans since 2012. To learn more, please visit our webpage at willingwarriors.org.